Good afternoon. I'm Paula Dollarhide. Welcome to another in our series of Brown Bag Advising Colloquia. It's October 23rd, 2012, and today we have Donna Albano, who is Associate Professor of Hospitality and Tourism Management Studies here at Stockton College. She's the winner of the 2012 Provost Research and Professional Development Award in Academic Advising. We're very proud to have her today with us and the recipient of that award. Her topic is understanding the relationship between self-directed learning and advising business students. But really, this is a session for anyone who's interested in student responsibility in learning. So that involves all of us here at Stockton College. So I'd like to welcome Donna Albano, and thank you for your presentation today.
Thank you, Paula, and thank you everyone for being here. I do have advising business students, and that's because the last time I presented this was at a business studies faculty teaching summit at Drexel University. So I've kind of just tweaked that presentation to share with everyone here today. So I'd like to give you a little background, if that's okay, if no one minds me giving you a little background. You have a copy of the slides, but I didn't think the slides would be ideal since we were taping today, so we'll just kind of move through it. And I encourage you to just ask questions along the way, and we'll keep it as open as friendly. Tom Greitz has offered to just raise your hand if you have a question, and he'll get the mic over to you to be able to ask any questions. But let me give you a little bit of background. 5 years ago, I finished my dissertation, and I did my dissertation while I was working here at Stockton. I came from Atlantic Cape Community College teaching hospitality and tourism management as well. And one of the things when I went to Rowan University to get my EDD in educational leadership was, you know, I was a content expert in my field, but I definitely had a lot to learn about education and in particularly higher education. So Rowan was a catalyst for me to really learn about the world of higher education. And one of the things I really realized was just kind of, I guess, this misunderstanding about how students understand their own learning. I mean, how students understand why they're getting educated and what the point of certain classes are. You know, I had a history in higher education class, and that was an eye-opener to me, having been through, you know, an undergraduate education and a master's degree, and I still really didn't know a lot about the history of higher education, and I got to learn a lot about the liberal arts. And so when I was fortunate enough to be able to come to Stockton, that, you know, completely roots itself, where liberal arts and general studies are at the core of our mission, I thought this was a really fertile topic for me to explore even more. And what I wanted to explore was the relationship between business studies students, and at the time at Stockton we were called professional studies, we were pros. And all of the schools that were professional studies, I guess, business and you know, nursing, or the medical field, and computer science, we were all considered pros or professional studies. So there was a little, I found it interesting when I came here, you know, I don't want to use animosity, but there was definitely a vibe about pros and the rest of the college and some of the other schools, and if we fit. And we were kind of preparing students for the world of work. And, you know, a lot of the other parts of schools at the college were kind of learning for the sake of learning. You know, definitely tracking students for more school, for graduate studies. And I immersed myself in the liberal arts here. I actually took Bill Daly's Courses, Majors, and Careers course because I really wanted to, and because all roads pointed me to Bill Daly about the history of Stockton and the point of having students understand, you know, why they're here, why they should learn certain things for certain careers, and that was a real eye-opening experience for me. Okay, so fast forward, I do my dissertation on, you know, teaching liberal arts to business studies students, and I had just an epiphany that many students really did not connect the two at all. General studies was something they kind of needed to do. You know, I still hear students say, let me just, you know, get that out of the way, or do that over the summer, or whatever the case may be. And then, you know, they would focus or concentrate. In my particular program, it's business. And Paul is right. Any school, any major, this would apply, because when we move through my slides, and you guys can see it on slide 4, you know, I just all of our students look at this general studies curriculum. They just look at that box. There's 48 credits, and they're usually here for criminal justice, political science, whatever they're made, hospitality and tourism management, and then they have this general studies. And I really got to thinking about, how do I engage students in owning this general studies curriculum and really looking at what those courses are, what they mean, and how it can really kind of apply and help them, in their overall picture of their education, and not just the 80 credits that they finish in their degree. So fast forward to a colleague of mine, Joe Lemma, in our program, said, there's actually a study out there that would help you determine your students' attitudes and perceptions and skills in their own learning, in their own learning readiness. So this entire seminar is about, I was funded from the Provost Academic Advising Award, and I used that to do a very small pilot study just of my advisees last spring with this instrument. So you can look at the first couple slides. I mean, basically what this is about, I really wanted to get my arms around getting more information about providing a framework for students to maybe take ownership or, just assess where they were with their own learning, basically. And I was particularly interested in general studies, but even in the major, I would have students that were very disciplined in one thing, but if a class or an elective that had maybe nothing to do with what they were interested in was offered at the right time or with the right teacher, I would find that they would just want to take that. And it still frustrates me to this day. I'm not by any means done with this process. I'm actually very much in the very beginning stages of it. And I'll explain that a little bit further. So you see the general studies curriculum. I don't need to go any further about that. The self-directed learning. So it's really a method of instruction. So by using this instrument and using the results, my intent is to really use self-directed learning as a method of instruction, and being engaged with academic advising and the I want to say NACADA, but the National Academic Advising Association, you really learn about advising is teaching, and one step further, advising is coaching. And this is exactly my intent by kind of engaging my students. So I have a new faculty member that just joined our program, Jane, with us here today, and she's going to find out just how crazy I really am about, how engaged I really am with students. And I get tortured about it all the time with my faculty, about how much I know about my students and how I kind of track them down. And I really want more than just that relationship where it's time for me to pick my classes, okay, good, see you later, and then I see them at graduation, and that's the end of that. So I really think that there's a lot of proof in a better relationship, and more information can really better inform them. We have a capstone course in our program called Cooperative Education, and we do this our senior year, where we put students to work and we bring them back on campus in a cohort model, and we're trying to tie all this great theory that we've taught them over the years into the world of work and practice. I mean, the fact of the matter is we really do prepare students to go to work in the hospitality industry, entry-level management and supervisory positions. So we really want to make sure we kind of tie all that up neatly in a bow and prepare these students to do that. And that's their senior year. And it was so frustrating to me that students would get to that place, that senior year, that cohort, and still be uninformed and unsure and not really aware of I don't want to say of anything, but of just I think about all the time they've spent in school and in classes and in learning, and I would think that all that would be a springboard, and we still weren't doing a good job connecting those dots, and I really want to continue to figure out why. So self-directed learning as a method of instruction, and then of course what it's defined as is the amount of responsibility that the learner accepts for his or her own learning. So I used this test, and I just gave you guys some of the information if you're interested in pursuing any of this as you go further. The website for the instrument, the SDLRS, which is just a self-directed learning readiness scale, well used, well documented, tons of research on the document. It's a validated instrument, and it's a Likert score test. It has 58 questions on it, and part of the funding that I received from the advising board allowed me to just pilot this with my advisees. So I'm going to ask Paula to pass a couple of these around if you don't mind. Paula? So I know I'm talking 90 miles a minute. Does anybody have any questions right now just about the foundation, how I kind of got to this point, what the goals are?
So you gave it to your advisees for the first time.
For the first time, I engaged the instrument. I looked at some of the research. It's, like I said, a 58 question Likert scale questionnaire. And if you look on one of the slides, it says they can answer from a 1 to a 5. So, you know, almost always true of me. I'm passing out another handout because the sample items on that slide on the second page are really small. So I'm passing out, made that larger for all of us in the room who need to have that larger, which is me. I'm giving you an idea of how many questions. One of the things I did learn about the instrument is that, so there's a fee for the instrument, and then as much analysis as you want done for the instrument are all levels of, you know, fees. So I just got the basic instrument. I got the results, you know, on the Likert scale reported back to me. I'll get to that in a second about just the average score. But I could really have dug deeper into literally the answers of each questions and where that fell into what category in the instrument on the readiness scale. So if we're looking at the second page of slides, gave you a little bit of information about if you look about the questionnaire. Then the handout I just gave you is the sample items. Just look at that one page for a second. So you can get an idea of the types of questions that we're asking the students in the questionnaire. So let me get to that. So, you know, I look forward to learning as long as I'm living. I know what I want to learn. I love to learn. It takes me a while to get started on new projects. You know, you could just scan that list of questions. They're the types of questions out of the 58 questions. I can tell whether I'm learning something well or not. Understanding what I read is a problem for me. If you look at the next slide, the instrument, the readiness scale, measures 8 different factors. So it can really drill down the results to tell you which questions apply to which of the 8 factors. I did not do that in the pilot study. My intent the next time around is to drill down on the answers and get some of the specifics. So you'll realize what I learned from the pilot study, which is why you do pilot studies, is that I think the overall information was good, you know, the data and the results, even though I had a really small sample. I think maybe drilling down further into which questions and where the students, you know, whether it was creativity, view of learning as lifelong, self-understanding. I think if I had a little bit more information as a result, and I'll have a larger pool, I think that will inform me and us going forward. And I'll tell you what I've done going forward in just a moment. So any questions about that? You get a little picture of the instrument, and then a little bit about the 8 factors. So I really wasn't able to specify from this pilot study about the 8 factors. I know now in the future that I can, but it does give me an overall picture of the types of questions and how I'm going to help and direct students. So you can see how the scale is scored. That's, you know, the result, you know, what the below and the average and the above average. And if you look at just my pilot study, I had 54 advisees, 36 completed the assessment, 8 male, 28 females. The mean was 221.08, and then the average score for adults across the board is 214. So my advisees were a 221. So, and if you look over at, that's average. And so it's not shocking that it came up average, but if you can kind of read the small print, sorry. Average, you know, more likely to be successful in more independent situations, but not fully comfortable with handling the entire process or of identifying their learning needs. And this is exactly where, you know, I would like to see us above average. I would like to see us move, and I'd like to use my next batch to inform whether I can move those students. We're thinking about doing maybe freshmen and then giving them the assessment again as a senior and seeing if we've moved them from, you know, either below average or average to above average. So we'd like to see if we could actually take the results and shift them into more light bulb moments. That's what I call it. I would really like to see more.
These weren't all freshmen, were they?
No, this was just a potpourri of my advisees. One of the things the assessment doesn't do, am I doing that on the next? All right, so if you do what we learned on the next slide, all of the results give me is their name or their ID, their age. Under 25 was a category, so everyone in my test pool was under 25. I think that I need to ask a specific question. I have the ability to embed open-ended questions into the scale. into the assessment. So I think maybe looking at a specific age may better inform me. That's one of the things we're going to put in the open-ended questions. They have a drop-down for occupation, and every student put in student. Four-year college student as occupation, lesson learned. I think I can leave that to find out where they are as far as school, but I think I need to ask a specific question of whether the student's working or not, and maybe in particular how much, maybe a range of how many hours. I think that speaks to their level of engagement in their own learning as well, how much they're working. So I'm definitely adding a question about work and occupation and maybe hours. When I expand it, right now they were all my major, so I didn't have to ask a question about major, but when I expand it, I will certainly add a specific major. I'll specify the age. And I think maybe asking them their GPA, maybe even within a range to inform my study might be a little bit better too, and just to see if there's a correlation between, I don't necessarily agree that the best and the brightest are the ones most engaged in their learning. Sometimes I think they're the ones sleepwalking through the classes because we're not challenging them enough. So that's one of the things I want to try to tie together as well. But it does give me some things like obviously the ethnicity and then the exam actually, for each person, tells me what percentile of the results where each individual student came out. So I know that for each individual student. So what that did immediately for me, just from last spring to now, was two things. I've decided that hi, will you be my advisee, bring the form to you, have you sign it, is I'm not doing that anymore. I've decided I'm not doing that anymore. This is the beginning of a relationship for me, and if this student wants a relationship with me, I need to get a little bit more buy-in from them. So I've devised basically a precepty, basically an application. I don't like the word application, but I'm going to work on that. Questionnaire or whatever the case may be. And it helps me do a couple things. Gives me a little bit more information about the student. It certainly helps me refresh my memory in between meeting with this student because, like I said, I have well over, that was 54 last semester. I think, Cindy, I have well over 54 advisees this semester. And so I just can't always remember, and especially for the ones that I only meet that one time, I need a little refresher. So this little precepty application helps me already. I just put a bunch of questions on a word, and I would give it to you, but it's constantly evolving. Every time I realize, I should have asked that, or I need that piece of information. So I gave you a bunch of questions that I have on my precepty evaluation right now, or my application. So I always ask them, what their major is, if they have a minor, would they consider a minor? And you guys can look at the questions on this. I think that's one of the, yes, it's one of the bigger handouts that I printed because I thought that was small too. But things like, certainly if they transferred and where they transferred from and what courses, but I like information like if they had a really memorable course, what was it? If they had a really memorable faculty member or teacher, who was it and what made them memorable? So this is much more of maybe an interview, for lack of a better word. This is much more me trying to just get my arms around the person, what motivates them, what did they learn, what didn't they learn. I advise students in the right when it gets to drop and add, and we know how late that is in the semester here, and they'll say, I'm dropping my class. I wanted to come talk to you about dropping my class. I go, what's the class? Who is it? They still can't tell me the name of the faculty member. We're in, what, the 13th week of school, the 12th week of school, right? They can't tell me. They can't tell me the faculty member's name. You've sat through 13. Now, maybe they haven't sat through 13 weeks of school, which is why they're dropping the class. But something like that, I need to try to, that bothers me. So I need to find more triggers and, how do I engage that student a little bit more in their own world. I have conversations with my students all the time. This class is boring, I might drop, not my class, of course, but this class, they'll come to me and say that this class is so boring, and I said, well, what do you do about it? And they go, what do you mean, what do I do about it? I go, well, what do you bring to the table? What's the last question you asked in class? What's the last piece of information you contributed to that environment? What's the last time, you came to the table with something on topic about that class? When's the last time you challenged that faculty member to a point they were making or a note on the slide or whatever the case may be? And inevitably, I have actually never had a student, I've had one student, honestly, tell me that they've done that. And that's, I know as people sitting in this room, we want that. I know we want that from students. So I'm hoping that some of this help prompt that. You know, your parent, you really are trying to spark or ignite interest and engagement and have that be reciprocal somehow. The academic environment for me is entirely too transactional. I give it out, they spit it back, I give them a grade, they're only going to do exactly what I want them to do, not a minute more, not a paragraph more, not a sentence more, not if I don't say it. The minute you give a student an assignment and I don't tell them how long it has to be, and I don't tell them whether to type it or not type it, and I don't tell them you know, what needs to be included, what not to be included, it is the most uncomfortable situation for them, and I refuse to do it, especially my seniors. I refuse to give them that many parameters at that point. You know, you're a college graduate, you're getting ready to graduate. I need you to be able to, at this point, articulate your thoughts, put them in writing, and do it the way you think is the best way to present that. So if you're going to come in with a crayon document, you know, on a crumpled up piece of paper, and you think that that's college level work, do it. You know, for every action, there's a reaction. So I'm in a little tough love, but also, you know, I wonder if we haven't overstructured or informed our students to give us exactly what we want. And then when it comes time for them to do something without that structure, they're paralyzed. And you know, I really would like to make some inroads in that. I'm not lofty enough to think I can change that entirely. But you know, my relationships are going to be different, and that's all I can really be responsible for. So I have a series of questions. They're constantly changing. In my major, they might change according to what's going on in the industry, where the hot trends are, where they might be working. But I do ask a series. You know, I even ask things like brothers or sisters. Yes, I know some of my students' pets' names. They send pictures. You know, I know some of it's a little crazy, but and I know you don't think it has anything to do with learning, but for me, it's about the relationship. If you look at the next slide for my NACADA folks in here, I do want to share that I do believe in this advising as coaching, and I do really believe in this cycle, truly. And I look at this as the advising cycle as far as I'm concerned. So my preceptee application was something that I could do in that beginning as far as preparation and as far as rapport building, because I thought the preceptee questionnaire helped me build rapport, even if it was things like finding out where they lived and if they had brothers and sisters. So, you know, if you notice in that cycle, you know, the actual advising of the student doesn't come for like 3 or 4 more steps. And I think that there's too many of us who kind of skip the first 3 or 4. You know, we prepare for advising day maybe, and then we advise. And we don't do the welcome or the rapport or any exploration. And I think there's work to be done. And I think that what I've done here helps do that work. I'll take a pause. Does anyone want to ask any questions or comment at this point before I move forward? Yes, Jane?
I was wondering if the preceptee application needs to be private, because I'm thinking of using it on Blackboard, and I was wondering if it would be inappropriate to use a discussion board post for something like that, but then the other advisees would see what the person wrote.
It's a great question. This is all private in my world the way I do it. So, and it's all voluntary. You know, they don't have to answer every question on my preceptee application. I would probably, I think that you would get better and more feedback if you don't put it public, but I think what you could do is do it private and then get consent, and if there were things you wanted to share on Blackboard with the student's consent, you could do it that way. But I would probably advise, you know, most of my students think this is like an interrogation. They want that form signed, they want to take it back to academic advising, and they want to be done. And so I have them thinking twice about this being a relationship, and that's my intent. So if they're willing to get that buy-in and you're willing to get that buy-in, then maybe you could start metering out conversations and things like that. I haven't taken it to that level yet. This is still pen and paper in a folder. I still make folders for all my advisees. I still, you know, I have to look at notes, and a lot of it's tough lessons learned. Cindy will attest to the fact that, you know, we didn't discuss that, you didn't say that, you didn't tell me to take that W, now I'm not graduating. You know, I've learned those tough lessons here at Stockton, and I'll make a note about, you know, when we discussed that, at what meeting, I did so tell you to take that W, and, you know, some of it's CYA on my part, but some of it's really just to refresh my memory that we did in fact have that conversation and maybe what they said. So okay. I don't think it's a bad idea, I just think you're going to probably need consent.
Good idea.
Any other questions, comments at this point before I rattle? The NACADA slide?
What is the item after rapport building? What in that cycle? In that Okada slide?
Exploration and clarification.
Okay.
For me, or you really just wanted clarification on the slide, or do you?
Yeah. I just
Couldn't read it. Oh, it says exploration and clarification. I credited Nakata because I took that right off of their website. But it was one of the things I learned. I went to a Nakata conference, I think, 2 years ago, and it was one of the things in one of the sessions that was being discussed. So it resonated with me at that time about, do we prepare and welcome and rapport build and explore and then advise the student? Because really, without that, I'm not really sure how we're advising. Really not sure how we're advising if we don't have all of that information. I know it gets done, I'm just not sure how. So then fast forward to the last larger slide that I gave you, but I have a few slides in between that. So the pre is my preceptee application, ever evolving in the folder. It's a part of the condition of me having a relationship with the student. And then the post now is a learning contract. So this is really evolving too. Because I just did this last spring, I haven't really fully dove into the learning contract. I've done a couple students on a case-by-case basis, but I haven't dove into this fully yet. So the learning contract, lots of research on learning contracts. They're designed to literally, I guess, help the student identify what their plan is. What resources are they going to use? What strategies are they going to use? Because at this point, the conversation about, what do you like? What do you want to learn more about? I mean, what class do you want to sit in for 15 weeks and, engage in? And that's when all those pre-questions become important. So I have a student who is a business major, but he loves to surf. So, we actually have a class at Stockton that has
Science of forecasting waves.
the science of forecasting waves, right, that surfers tend to migrate to. But I think this semester it was in Manahawkin or Hamilton. It was in Manahawkin. So, so I know that the student likes surfing. He comes to me that he wants the class. And now now this becomes a challenge because he needs to take other classes. He needs to get back on campus to take other classes, but he wants to drive to Manahawkin to take this class. But that's really an engaged conversation. So how do we make that work? I mean, is it financially work? Does it work with his schedule? Can we make this happen? And of course, 3 and 4 phone calls later, will it be offered at another time, in another place, another semester? He's not graduating yet. But those are the kinds of conversations. It isn't just a checklist of, here's what I'm taking. I mean, I really needed to say, are you going to drive to Manahawkin for this class? Are you going to get back here in time to take another class, whatever the case may be? But that's a perfect example of a piece of information that surfaced from the preceptee application that the kid liked surfing to advising him about general studies, because where he would have never, I wouldn't say never, but I don't know that he would have been prompted to look for a general studies class, because I said, let's look for some classes that have something to do with what your life's interests are. Not just something that's going to plug into your schedule. And he came back to me with this class, and then we had to have the whole but it's in Manahawkin and what do you think I should do conversation. So that's just one little example. So the learning contract, he was the student that, I tried to say, what do you want to learn more about? What do you want to gain competence in? And so, this is something that can actually be in writing, would go in the folder, but this really ends up kind of being blank. It's a discussion, and I give it to the student, and then the student comes back with it filled in. And it's not just a static document. So this could be a semester-to-semester document. I could do a learning contract every semester, like, it could just be what they learned this semester and how they were going to learn it and where they were going to learn it and what they were going to do. And then we could do it again next semester. For some of my students, it's more career-driven, so they really need to find out more about how they can get from this, college to their career. And so the learning becomes more about ways to engage in that, ways to engage in the industry, what type of publications, industry associations, things like that. So it looks very different for different students. And I think that's part of the advising process too. Some student might just need this as a snapshot one semester where it can be measured in increments, and one student might need a much bigger plan. I find that the transfer students come in much more with their eye on the ball. Like they know they got to get to that, they're going to finish their school and they're going to get to the first-time full-time freshmen or students that are freshmen and sophomores here need that clarity, need that spelled out a little bit more for them. So the learning contract helps me do that. It is a reciprocal contract. They know we're going to revisit it. It's kind of interesting. It sits in their folder and they're like, what did I say? What did I write? You know, that kind of thing, although they're encouraged to keep a copy. And then I just wrote a little bit of a framework. If you want to do something similar like this works well. But you know, I say definitely have some objectives. So if it's about learning, about one particular subject, if it's about just moving through your G courses, if it's about understanding a minor better, if it's about, you know, what does it mean to take a minor, then that could be what the contract's about. If it's really about something career-driven or, you know, graduation-driven, meaning after school, that's fine, but however you want to do that. But specifically ask the students, well, what's your plan? Or how are you going to learn more about that? Well, where might you go? Who could you talk to about that? So, you know, students don't even realize who their resources are sometimes. You know, we have an adjunct that teaches teaches our facilities management class, but he does food service planning and design. He goes into hotels and restaurants and buildings and reworks space and does a lot of computer-aided drafting to maximize space for restaurants and hotels with equipment and things like that, a lot of energy-efficient stuff. So students may have a project in their food and beverage management class, and they have to interview somebody, and they don't even realize sometimes that their resources are, you know, right within their own program, right in their, they think they have to make calls out to 800 numbers and companies that, you know, that they're disconnected with, and sometimes it's just about connecting those dots. So we put it in writing. So really, at the end here, I think you know what my goals are. I clearly want to have students kind of identify their own goals and go back and revisit that with them. And they're very, very different for different students. I mean, I think it's interesting how we top-down drive it. We're in a college right now that's heavy on assessment. We have school goals, program goals, you know, college goals. Oh, we have all these goals. And we have all these strategies and, you know, 2020s and all this stuff, and where, you know, where do the students' goals? Where are they? What do they want to do? And I think this is a place where we can kind of plug that in. And I know that it all has to tie together, but why wouldn't it in your program kind of all tie together? So that's where I'm at. I'm pitching a grant this semester with my colleague Joe Lemma to give the instrument to the entire program. So that'll at least be around 200 students, so I'll get a much better feel. And then, of course, he wants to do the whole college. I said maybe we'll just do the School of Business first. I'm like a baby steps kind of girl, so I'll do maybe the School of Business next. If I got the iPad for the intent purpose of taking the instrument mobile, and I literally just walked around and gave the instrument, the 58 questions, to students on the iPad wherever they were. Took it into classes, saw them in the hallway, you know, went to the cafeteria, and so it wasn't like, you know, I had to send them the link and beg them 1,000 times to do it. I just got them wherever they were and had them do the instrument wherever they were. And, you know, quite frankly, they're real savvy, and they zip right through it and send, and then the group analyzes all the results for you and gives you the results. So that was good. That was good for me.
My question is this. I love the concept of readiness, and I apologize for not listening to your whole presentation.
It's on tape.
What are your thoughts about applying this to graduate level students? Because I think one of the things that I find in particular is that transition from undergraduate to graduate is huge. It's a huge leap. And especially for our Stockton students that are undergraduates that then go on to our programs, they just don't realize the enormity and the way of synthesizing information that's really at a much higher level. So is this tool in particular validated and has been tested in the graduate student population? It has been, yes, I can tell you that. And to what level, I don't know, and all the resources are here. If you go on that website, you'll see all of the resources. So to what level, meaning like is it 50% undergraduate and 50% graduate? Okay, that's why I just was wondering, has it been tested in, like, are there studies that show some distinctions between the readiness of undergraduates versus readiness of graduates? And if so, is this a predictor of what I might be seeing in my population of students that are newly graduate students? All right, so the part one question is, yes, it's been tested in graduate studies. To what degree? I didn't dive into that research because I was focused on undergraduates, but it is there. It's absolutely there. You know, a predictor, you know, I don't know that it's so much a predictor in that, actually, I guess it could be called a predictor. I mean, you are really supposed to, it measures factors, and then what you're supposed to do is take the information and
and I guess help and advise, which is why I'm doing it in an advising context. So I would think that, but it is very informative on the front end. So I think if you got the results, it wouldn't be so much a predictor, but it would help you probably gauge where the students were or needed the most help. Like some of the questions, and I'll get you the handouts, Mary Lou, but some of the questions that the students get asked are, I know what I want to learn. It takes me a while to get started on new projects. When you drill down on some of the responses to those questions, that may help you very much with where the weak spots are with those students making transitions.
Great.
So I would think it would be a great tool for that.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
Sure. Okay.
This is kind of nuts and bolts, but how much does it cost, and how is how is that handled?
Ready for the nuts and bolts. The exams are $4.95 each if you order under 100, and then in increments of 100, they drop $1 each depending on how many you order. The analysis, the basic analysis that I got the first time around, is all part of that. And so is the online access. So that's all part of that. Then it starts to increase depending on how much you want to drill down on the data and what type of reports that you want. Very accessible. You literally talk to these folks on the phone. They were completely accessible. But they start at $4.95 each, and which is the first batch that I ordered. And you can keep it open for as long as you want. So if you think it's going to take you a full semester to administer all the studies, they'll leave it open as long as you need it open. No, good nuts and bolts.
How many semesters have you been doing this, and are you noticing a change in behavior when your students come to advising appointments and their readiness for the appointment, and are they resisting this, embracing it, are they excited by it? What kind of background can you give us as to what's happening now?
So I haven't been doing it long at all. I just did this pilot last spring. But the Precept-D application, which was an immediate reaction for me that I wanted to get out of that was they're caught a little bit off guard. I don't know that anybody asks them for anything really reciprocal other than to sign that form, so they're caught a little bit off guard about that. But I haven't had any resistance about being willing to answer it. Some people have asked to take it and bring it back because they look at the handful of questions and they realize they're not going to be able to sit down. Because really that whole exchange when they just drive by your office and ask you to sign that form is, they've given themselves, all of 37 seconds to do that. And if you're not there, you weren't there, I needed my form signed. So, that I need to change that. That was one of the things that bothered me the most. So I said, when you have time, here are my office hours, bring the form back. I'll then sign your Precept, your Precept form. So that is, it hasn't met with resistance. It's just, I think they're taken a little off guard for that. My students are very prepared for two things. They're prepared for academic advising day because I literally only have 15 minutes to meet every single one of them on that day. I make it perfectly clear that that day is just about me scanning their CAP and helping them with coursework. And then in my advising, I have a Blackboard advising website, send lots of communications. I have a preceptorial video. I have all the advising syllabus. I've got all the nuts and bolts. And I say, any conversation beyond that, here are my office hours. Here's all of my days that I'm available by appointment. Let's have a conversation beyond that because I can't just do that day. I can't. So they come that day incredibly prepared for just academic advising. Our program group advises, so all of our faculty members are in one lab for the entire day, from 9 in the morning till 4 in the afternoon. So our students, their needs are beyond just selecting courses. So they want to see which electives the faculty members are teaching. We prepare students for our cooperative education cohort, which I was explaining to you, and they have to talk to. So I might be their advisor, but Karen might be teaching co-op next semester, and they need to have a meeting with Karen about co-op. So we all came together for academic advising. So even though that day is a whirlwind for me with just the classes, all of the pre-meetings and all of the post-meetings are by appointment or during office hours because they know they need to talk to me about a lot more than scheduling. And so I just make sure.
I was referring to the learning contract. How are you?
I only piloted a couple students, and my surfer was one of them that I gave the example for. So when I identified that he liked surfing and he came to me and said, well, then these are things I really should pursue other than business. And I said, your business courses are really pretty much spelled out for you. We know that you're a business major, and we know you're going to probably have a career in business, but I know that general studies is for more exploratory information. So that learning contract in that particular case was good. I don't have a ton of data on the learning contract yet, but the notes have definitely, I think the students, a student's doing an independent study with me right now who I'm having to do a complete career exploration. He's a business student in accounting, and I said, what are your plans for accounting? And he said, I really want to get into sports and entertainment. I go, okay. What have we done about that? Absolutely nothing. When are we graduating? December. You've done nothing about exploring sports and entertainment. You're an accounting major. You actually aren't even going to pursue accounting. And so my semester-long independent study with this student is nothing but career exploration. And I would have never known the sports and entertainment if I just had that reciprocal. He's an accounting major. I'm going to advise him about accounting classes. Here's what he needs. I'm done. I'll see you later. And I know that transactional relationship is what many of us have for a number of reasons. But that was my question about finding out about sports and entertainment is totally taking him in another direction. And now it's unfortunately, we're at 11th hour, but it still be better than nothing.
You got him started, that's for sure.
Not one thing. He's never been in the Career Center. He's not one thing. He doesn't know anything. I go, well, who hires in sports and entertainment? What are the field? What are the jobs? Where are the companies you apply for? And he's like, stop. I go, you're not leaving here without the answers to this stuff. And now he's brewing the day he approached me for an independent study. But he's not, and it's frustrating to me that he sat through all of these classes and all of this advising and all of, it's frustrating to me. Peter?
Thank you. This is a splendid presentation. I'm ready for my close-up. As director of the Center for Academic Advising, I get a considerable amount of pushback from both students and faculty about that form. To
Preceptor?
Change. Yeah. So students will typically say, well, can I just fill it in and leave it here? And I say, no, you've got to get it signed by your preceptor-to-be. And so some faculty, too, say, well, why do I have to do this grumble thing?
Right.
So, but I like this policy that we have, and I fought to retain it. I don't ever want to change it because it provides for exactly the sort of situation that you're describing. So my question is, would you recommend this to be a college-wide practice?
My preceptee application? Mm-hmm. You're having a hard enough time getting the form signed, so you want me to add another layer onto that?
No, and I don't want to add it either. But because if it came from me, it probably would not be well received. But this might be something that the faculty senate could advocate. It's really good practice. It's an excellent practice. I commend you for it. And it would be nice if it was wider.
I agree. Of course I agree. And I would love to see much more engagement with faculty and students in the advising process. And for a number of reasons, we just don't see it. Clearly, half the people in this room aren't faculty. I wouldn't say half, but some of the people in this room aren't even faculty that are here and engaged. So the people that really need you can't enforce, I don't know that you can make it happen. I really don't. I mean, it's a level of engagement that, of course, you would love to see, but, quite frankly, they're just faculty that, this is not where their focus is. They're not necessarily student-centered faculty, and I don't mean that in a mean way, because I think that it takes all kinds. I mean, I need the heavy-duty researcher, and, and I need the, the great administrator. We need all that, but...
well, in the meantime, you are yourself a shining exemplar of good practice.
It is good practice, but it's time-consuming. It's a labor of love. I mean, and honestly, if it's not a have-to thing, it's not a have-to thing. We know the stories of, the advising days that are used for class trips and, other things that are not even spent on the basics of advising. So to get to that next level really has to be a want and a desire. And I think maybe Peter, as I move forward, if I could really show some measurable progress about, maybe student testimonials or maybe something where, that we can show that it makes a difference, I think you might have some more ammunition there. But this is truly just because, I sleep, eat, and breathe this. This is I take a ton of pride in my profession, and I really think that there needs to be, and that doesn't mean somebody else doesn't, I don't mean that. I just mean in this particular, you know, being student-centered, that's all. It's just where my focus is. But you're not gonna get everybody to do it, I don't think.
My question is there any merit to, in fact, polling and querying our graduates from the business program to see the impact of this qualitatively and quantitatively in terms of their job acquisitions?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think that it would be great to follow a cohort. If I do the freshman and then the senior and then maybe take their pulse a year out, that, you know, that would be great. Again, then it becomes a kind of like a lifelong project for me. But I think you could easily poll alums right now and get information about, you know, who had the closest relationships, what was, and I think all roads, many roads, would lead back to a close relationship between faculty and an advisor and advising in general, not even just faculty, but just advising in general. I think that's it. I think we know that. The people in this room know that. I believe that. Does anybody do anything? I'll throw some questions at you guys. Does anybody do anything similar? Does anybody look at my list of questions and think, well, you could really ask a few more? Does anybody see themselves implementing a learning contract or something similar that might help you measure from semester to semester when you see your students?
I ask everyone that comes into my office, and I have many that are not my preceptees, what are your career goals, whether they're freshmen or seniors. And that really throws them off. What do you mean? I'll think about that when I graduate, and I almost like have to jump up and down sometimes and have a fit about it. I met a senior today. He's great. He has a 3.5 average. He has done nothing about his future career, and he needs 4 more classes. He graduates in the spring, and I'm like, this is your homework. I wrote it down. Visit the Career Center, sign up for Career Connect, do the steps that will upload your resume to the Career Center, and then people can find you as well as you can find. Have you thought about civil service exams? Have you thought about the FBI? Did you go to the career fair? The answer was no to all of those things. So.
Right. We've created a benchmark in our program that is exactly that. It's no credit. It's actually a course they have to register for, HTMS 3901, but it has no credit attached to it. But they have to, it was initially designed so that they would have hospitality industry work experience on their resume before they'd apply for co-op, because industry, you know, we're a double-edged sword. They want the degree, but they, you know, they don't necessarily want the green as grass student. And so we're trying to place entry level, you know, supervisory. We really want them to have some type of responsibility in a cooperative education job. In order to do that, they need to have had some experience. So it used to just be this gatekeeper to make sure that students had experience going into co-op. Now we've expanded that to include completed resume, account on Career Connect. You know, Pat Donahue's here now, who teaches a career development class for our, that the program is under conversation about making it a mandatory component before cooperative education, before that class in preparation. So we'll have the benchmark, the career development class, and then co-op as like a ladder. So we literally, it's a pass-fail, it's in the system. Every preceptee is responsible for their own student's benchmark, and that's a place where every student has to have been at least in Career Connect and have their resume done, and then have hospitality industry work experience. So the 3 components that we can at least get our arms around in the program.
And this is a whole shift in our advising, what we are doing now in advising. But as the school grows and grows, I am starting to feel like we need special faculty / preceptors for freshmen coming in. The faculty in certain majors are just so overwhelmed with students that to keep freshmen engaged and lead them down this path that we're talking about, if we could have faculty members devoted. Now, I know the general studies is devoted to undecided majors, but for the biology freshman major, when I put that onto a faculty member that has 35, and they're 35 to 40, those 5 freshmen, are they getting the attention that they need?
No, and I guess your answer is probably no. I feel like we got plenty of time with them. Freshmen are going to be here for a while, so let's concentrate on, you know, I know what happens because I know the way we feel. I think every program feels that way. Oh, we got plenty of time to get to those freshmen. And sometimes they're the ones who need it the most.
This is where I think, you know, people have different styles or different ways of getting at the same information, but an advising syllabus could do what you're talking about. You know, what should a freshman bio major be able to do? What should a sophomore bio major be able to do? A junior? If you have objectives for your advising situations, if you have learning outcomes for your advising situations, then you should know an HTMS freshman isn't going to be doing what an HTMS senior is going to be doing, and so on and so forth. And there are other programs on campus that have somewhat similar structures, but they do it in a different way, and they may do it by portfolio, like speech pathology, communications disorders. They have all their ducks in a row. They know what freshmen, sophomore, juniors, seniors. And I've been advocating this for several years, is to know what your objectives are. And you don't have to do it the same way Donna did it. There are many ways at getting at student goals, and you could do it with educational autobiographies, where you're looking at who do you want to become? What do you want to do? Let's look at, you know, what can I do at 18, and what do I want to be able to do at 22 or 24 or whenever you graduate? And if my goals are grad school, how am I going to get there, and what kinds of critical thinking skills should I have? Am I taking an MCAT? Am I taking a GMAT? Am I taking a GRE? And what do I need to know for that? But that's where intentional advising comes into place. And if you're not intentional about your advising, then you don't know what you want them to accomplish, and it boils down to registration for classes. So there's a big difference between registering for classes and advising, I think. I mean, I really think the whole advising as coach, is perfect and spot on about this. And through the self-study that we did this year, it came out loud and clear that students are wanting this, relationship building. But they really don't know how to get there. They haven't had this at a community college. They haven't had it at their high school. So it's our job to teach them this, because they don't know what this is all about. So if you just start thinking of it, if you haven't been thinking in these terms, if you just start thinking in these terms of, I want my advising to be intentional, and I have these goals, and make sure that you're covering them, you can do it in any style that you wish. And Donna, you've just done an excellent job of showing us, you know, what a very intentional kind of advising is, and I applaud you for that.
Thank you.
Done a great job.
And Paula makes a great point. It is really individual. It really is. I mean, the surfer is not the, you know, the transfer student with their eye on grad school. I mean, they're just so two different people, and I could never advise those two the same way. I mean, I never could. And Cindy's question always, you know, what are your career goals? I mean, they have kind of a cookie cutter career goal, and they don't really have a clear path to get to it. And even the path is different for different people, depending on their situation or how old they are or where they live, or, you know, I mean, I have students who will never leave New Jersey. I have students who can't wait to get out of New Jersey. I have students that, you know, will only work for Marriott. I have students who will never work for Marriott. So, I mean, you know, those relationships are all, very, very different, and so are the conversations. So,
we're coming to the end of our time today. I'm sure Donna would be happy to share these materials with anybody who's watching this via YouTube today. Those of you who are here today, she has wonderful handouts for you. And we just thank you for being here today. And thank you, Donna.
Thank you, Paula.